So what you're going to do, I'm going to talk about how you're going to get your data and what you're going to graph. Okay, so you can click on the link in the document, or you can go to a browser and you type in Quelp Seattle homepage. You're going to click on the first link that comes up. Then you're going to click on Data, and you're going to click on Linear Scatter Plots. And there's going to be a whole bunch of different data sets that you can choose. Now you're going to have to choose a positive correlation and graph that, and a negative correlation and graph that. So whichever one I do, you cannot do. So I'm doing data set 78, which is the Mauna Loa in Hawaii, which is a relationship of the amount of CO2 that is expelled from the volcanoes versus year. You're going to go down to view the data, and you have a whole list of data here. Now, what you're going to have to do is copy the data that's here. So you're going to put the mouse in the first cell that has the title. You're going to highlight that, and you're going to highlight all the data, and you're going to go all the way down. And then once you have that highlighted, you're going to let go of the mouse and you hit Control C, which has now copied that data and put it into your clipboard. You're going to open a new tab. You're going to go to the waffle. You're going to open up Sheets. You're going to click on a blank spreadsheet. You're going to click in the A1. Just click once. That's all you have to do. Then you're going to hit Control V. All the data comes in with the titles. Once that's done, the data's there. Now we're ready to do a graph. So we are going to, in order to do the graph, you're going to highlight A1 and B2, including the titles, and we're going to scroll down to the bottom and highlight the data that you want to graph. You're going to go to Insert, Chart. Now what Google Sheets does is it puts it in the format that it thinks you want. Okay, I don't want a line chart. I want a scatter plot. So now over here, the chart editor comes up. I click on chart type. I scroll down until I hit scatter plot. Now what it does is it just puts little dots so it looks like it's a continuous line. It's actually not. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And then we're going to talk about what other information you need to do. Okay. First thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our titles and our axis labels are correct. So I go to chart and axis titles. Here it says chart title. It already put it into CO2 versus year. It's already in the correct format, so I don't need to do anything with that. If I want to change it, I can click here and I can change it. Or if you want to get to the point where you edit, you would just double click on that and then you would be able to edit it there. For the y-axis, I can double click on this, or I can come over here and click on the horizontal. It already is year, so it's fine. I can double click on that, or go to vertical axis, and the CO2 ppm is there. Great, so that's already there. Now, if you do want to add a subtitle, you can add a subtitle, but that is not necessary. Next, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to close this down. I'm going to come down and I want to go to series. Now I'm going to want to add a trend line. So I go all the way down for series. I click on the trend line. It's hard to see, but there is a trend line that's added in there. If we had something other than linear, we could choose a different type. I'm going to go to label, use equation. So now the equation is on the line, and show R squared. So the R squared is 0.969, which for data collected in the real world is pretty good. It's actually a pretty good correlation. Now, last thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to add minor grid lines. Now, the reason why we add minor grid lines, and this was a pet peeve of Mr. LaLiberte, and he's absolutely correct, where let's say I want the data for 1981. Well, where is 81 in here? How am I going to be able to go up and go across? How can I use this graph successfully if I don't have any markings in between? So in order to do that, I'm going to click on grid lines and ticks, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to click where it says minor grid lines. Now you have to be careful because it automatically fills in what it thinks you want. Right now it put 2 lines, which means I have 3 intervals. 3 intervals doesn't make sense at all because each of these lines represents 33.33333. That is not terribly helpful. So I need to add something that makes sense. Now I'm going to choose a count that is 1 less than the intervals I want. So if by choosing 9, it gives me 10 intervals here, which means each line represents 10. So now my Y is split up into minor intervals of 10 ppm. I'm then going to choose horizontal axis. I need it on both. I'm going to click minor grid lines, and it automatically put a count in that I don't want. And I'm going to choose 9. Now I have those minor grid lines and everything looks exactly the way that it should look. Okay, so this is what you're going to want. Now, one other thing that we might want to do is if I look here at this graph, notice how all my data is spread out between the 300 and the 400 here. I mean, right? And I really don't need 0 to 300. So you might want to reset this so that my minimum value is 300 and my maximum value is 400. Now, by doing that, I can see my trend line. It makes my data much more visible, and it makes the graph much more easy to read, and it makes it just a much more effective graph. Now, what you're going to do once you have the first graph done, this is a positive correlation. What you're going to want to do is you need to do a second graph. You're going to go back to the QUELP data series. You're going to go back and you're going to choose a second set of data. But this time it needs to be a negative correlation, which means the slope needs to go down. You're going to copy that data. You're going to come back over to your Google Sheets. You're going to add a sheet. Now I have sheet 2. I'm going to put my data in here. I'm going to add a graph. When you're done with those 2 graphs, you can title your spreadsheet to Graphing Lab or whatever you want to call it. And then it is this document that you're going to upload to Google Classroom. Now, what I recommend is you keep these references handy because you are going to have to do these types of graphs all year long. So make sure that you get good at this, and you're going to have to use it this year, and you're going to have to use it for physics.